A scary story about an abandoned mental hospital. In a small town surrounded by forests and mountain ranges, there was an old mental hospital. The hospital had been closed many years ago after a series of terrible events that locals preferred not to remember. They said that terrible experiments were conducted on patients within these walls, tormenting their minds and souls, and the soul of the head nurse, Zina, could not leave this world. One day, a group of daredevils decided to check what secrets this sinister hospital was hiding. Among them was Vika, who was interested in paranormal phenomena. She always dreamed of capturing Zina's spirit and making a sensational video that would be read throughout the country. The night they arrived at the hospital was dark and rainy. Mud squelched underfoot, and the wind howled so much that it seemed as if someone was calling for help. The group made their way inside with different flashlights. The dark corridors were filled with dust and circles drawn on the floor. Walking through the tangled passages, they came across an old office. On the table lay a diary, covered in dust and cobwebs. When Vika carefully opened it, she saw records of monstrous methods of treatment. Each page was saturated with suffering. Each call sounded louder, plunging them into an atmosphere of horror. Suddenly, one of the guys, Zina, shouted, "Look!" They all turned around and saw how Vika's flashlight suddenly lit up with a bright light, pointing to the open door. Behind the door stood a figure, barely distinguishable, but clearly possessing an eerie presence. Gradually, it began to approach. The group realized with horror that it was Zina. Her face was distorted by an evil smile. Her eyes were burning with a mad light. Vika, unlike the others, felt that there was more than just a spirit here. It was revenge. The only reason for the fear they were experiencing now. The figure began to move towards them, and each step sounded like a dull blow to the heart. The buzzing light of the lanterns was blinding, and it seemed that they were plunging into an abyss that was impossible to overcome. The friends jumped in different directions, but each of them became a victim of the dark spirit. The first victim was Katya, a lover of spiritualism. She tried to contact the spirit, hoping to save her friends, but in response she heard only Zina's laughter. At that moment, she realized that her desire was wrong. Instead of helping, she became part of this hellish game. Sergei and Tolik ran out onto the stairs, but the stairs seemed to lead nowhere. They scurried from side to side, but no exit was visible. Other frightened voices came from the darkness, creating an atmosphere of panic. At this point, Vika, left alone, quickly realized that everything she wished for could lead to terrible consequences. She took a few minutes to calm down, but then decided to investigate again. Realizing that time was running out, behaving like an experienced parapsychologist, she began to quietly cast spells, hoping that this would attract the attention of the spirit. But when she opened her eyes, she found that the spirit was already standing next to her. "Why are you here?" Zina said, her voice sounding like an echo from the distant past. It was like a slow, airy whisper that squeezed her breath. Vika felt a chill envelop her, and with each word she sank deeper into horror. Gathering all her courage, she answered, "I came to help you." However, this only angered the spirit. Zina came closer, and the screams of her victims were heard from all sides, filling every corner of the old building. In her last desperation, Vika decided that in order to save her friends, she had to play this dangerous game. She tried to attract the presence of virtual tools, mobile phones, and a camera, hoping that the information about her, duplicated in real time, could help her escape. For several minutes, the effect was eerie. Shadows on the walls began to dance, and Vika's friends floated in a stream of negative energy. Every word Vika uttered acquired unexpected powers, and it seemed that the spirit could not be controlled. Full of despair, Vika screamed, "I am ready to help you, Zina. Show me what you want." At that moment, the spirit seemed to raise its hands, and everything around changed. The hospital walls began to tremble, and a dull growl filled the air. Vika felt the darkness envelop her, and soon everything around her was plunged into complete darkness. When the light finally returned, she saw that she herself was inside the diary. Each page was torn one after another, and her voice was covered with a whisper in very suffocating tones. At that moment, the screams of her friends sounded in her head, but Zina was invisible, as if dissolved in eternity. Gradually, Vika realized that she had become part of the dark story that she wrote herself. Her victims, her friends, they were all part of this club of fear. The hospital was a living being, and now its voice sounded in her heart. Every night, at the very time when the moon illuminated the abandoned hospital, the whispers of lost souls were heard in the woods. Everyone knew that here was not only Zina's spirit, but also many others who had died within these walls, for whom the nights had become forever and changed. Psychiatry was their home, and the home would never let them go.